Hi, my name is Haniyah again, and I'll be talking about marijuana and psychosis today. So, here's a little information on marijuana, and I know we talked about it um, a week ago, maybe in class, and I just wanted to expand upon that. So, marijuana is the most consumed illicit drug worldwide. Marijuana is the most common psychotropic drug in the United States after alcohol. In 2018, more than 11.8 million young adults reported using marijuana in the past year. So, although they reported it, I don't really think that it meant like how much they use or smoke. I think that's the same thing. But it didn't necessarily say how much of it. It just reported that they said that they used it within the past year. So, it does not necessarily talk about how much they used it within the year. So in 2017, 1 in 16 high school seniors reported using marijuana every day in the United States. Marijuana contains more than 120 compounds, which are likely to have different properties, which can cause different effects, especially if they are different in potencies. THC is the key mind altering psychoactive substance in marijuana. And this THC is the substance that is responsible for triggering psychosis. So there are many ways marijuana can be used. It can be smoked in hand-rolled cigarettes, which is referred to as joints. Marijuana can be smoked in pipes or water pipes, which are bongs. Some people may also use vaporizers. This avoids inhaling the smoke. And a recent trend has been mixing marijuana in one's foods, especially baking products. So I personally do not smoke, but I do have or know people that smoke. And there was recently a person that I knew, and he was actually making them, and he was making them in all kinds of foods like Rice Krispie treats. I've seen edibles in gummy bears and chicken, which is kind of weird. But so it's not just in like baking or like sweet stuff. It can also be in actual food. They can use like THC oil and like mix it up in any type of batter. And a lot of people are really getting onto the trend of eating edibles. So marijuana and its effects on the brain. When a person smokes marijuana, THC is transported from the lungs to one's bloodstreams quickly. The body absorbs the THC slower when eating those edibles, and this can contribute to people who eat edibles that report no feeling until much later. So when people eat edibles, the reaction time does not kick in until about 30 minutes to an hour. So this can also be the reason why they take much longer to kick in. People end up consuming more because they don't feel an effect. So if someone eats a brownie or a piece of a brownie and they don't feel anything, they'll eat the whole brownie or they'll eat another brownie. And then when the reaction does kick in, it's a much more euphoric feeling, which causes a lot of people to, I think a lot of people prefer edibles now, especially in the younger age, because even though it takes longer for them, I feel like they get a better high. Researchers have suggested that using marijuana for many years can be linked to changes in the brain size. Studies found that people who have smoked daily for at least 4 years have a smaller amount of gray matter in the brain. What is altered when using marijuana? So altered senses, sense of time. It can go either slow or fast, usually slow. Changes in mood. I do have an experience with people, and they are usually much more calm or relaxed when they smoke as opposed to like not smoking, and they may be like irritated more quickly, especially if they use often. So when they don't have it, much like caffeine, it's just they have an agitated feeling or they want to get high again, to feel calm, relaxed around any situation. They have impaired body movements. They might move slow as well as thinking slow, so they have difficulty thinking and problem solving. Impaired memory, they might not be able to remember much. Hallucination, now this is associated with higher doses of marijuana. Delusions are also associated with higher doses. Psychosis could be a risk factor, which is highest when used regular and of high potency. So, what is psychosis? Psychosis is used to describe conditions that affect the mind where there has been some loss of reality. So, people can have psychotic episodes. A person's thoughts and perceptions are disturbed, and they may not be able to understand what is real and what is not. So, symptoms of psychosis are delusions, which are false beliefs. Some delusions may be that you're Superman or something. It's a false belief. Hallucinations, seeing or hearing things that are not there. Like someone may be having a conversation with a dead relative who is, no longer here, but they really believe that they were actually sitting there and having a whole conversation with that deceased person. So that's where hallucinations come in. Incoherent or nonsense speech. When they talk, it may be just a bunch of gibber and it doesn't correlate to the topic that you guys were talking about, or it may be like multiple topics in one and you can't follow along because it's just nonsense. Behavior that is inappropriate for a given situation. So you might be sitting at home and they're doing inappropriate things that aren't necessarily what you would do if you were just sitting on the couch. One may also experience depression, anxiety, sleep problems, social withdrawals. So they're usually more off to themselves. Lack of motivation. They don't really want to do anything but like lay in bed. Difficulty with self-functioning. So this means that they might not want to get up and go to work. They might just want to lay around, especially if depression, because depression, you don't want to be bothered with anybody. So daily functions like getting up, showering, going to work, eating. People who are experiencing psychosis, they might not want to do
marijuana and psychosis. Marijuana use is associated with psychosis, but there are a few studies regarding the effects. The risk of psychotic disorders is nearly doubled by marijuana use, especially use in adolescents. Adolescents is a population that is common when it comes to marijuana use because it can be seen as popular or allow you to fit in just by using the substance alone. Individuals who use marijuana are subjective to higher rating of paranoia, anxiety, slow time perception, feelings of strangeness, and inattention. Decreased feelings of objective performance on tasks, of working memory, and response are also influenced. Here's a video of a person explaining their psychosis experience themselves.
All of a sudden, I was like, wait, no, this isn't fun. And so I stood up, and I just remember everything going black, and I don't even really remember it. There's just kind of this period of time that I don't remember. I was just like, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god. And she was like, are you okay? And I was like, no, I'm dying. And I got up, and everything was spinning, and I felt like I was melting. I thought I was dying. I literally thought I saw tunnel vision. I thought I was seeing Jesus. And it was 100% the scariest moment of my life.
So that is just an example of some of the effects that can happen with marijuana-induced psychosis. The reason we chose this topic was because there are many people who believe that marijuana has little to no implications to their body. It is seen as a soft drug and a rite of passage for teenagers, no different than taking their first sip of alcohol. This probably could be due to the drug being so common and being used everywhere that when something becomes more common, it's seen as less of a threat or less of something to be worried about. Marijuana is also a controversial topic that is being discussed in society because of the legalization in many states. This drug is seen as less of a threat, and we feel that it is necessary to show the effects that it can have on its users. Key findings. Studies have shown that marijuana use in adolescents can be a contributing factor or triggering in triggering or worsening the symptoms of serious psychotic mental illnesses. Heavy pot use and prolonged lengths of exposure are both risks that can trigger a person's episode of psychosis. An association between escalation of marijuana use and an earlier age of onset of psychotic symptoms. Not only a risk for later development of primary psychotic disorders, but it is also a risk factor for early onset of these disorders. So basically, if someone has a mental illness, they are more prone to having psychotic induced psychosis than a person who is doesn't have an underlying mental illness for the use of marijuana. The impact on the population and users. Where mental illness, especially schizophrenia, already exists, prolonged and high potency marijuana can trigger symptoms. Adolescents are at higher risk. Most individuals don't find out until adolescence and early or late adulthood as they have had a mental illness. Smoking can trigger the onset. So mental illness is something that some people don't catch right away, or they don't feel like it is a need to go see a doctor about the issues they're having. So they're living with mental illnesses that they don't know about. So when they smoke marijuana, they can be smoking it and also inducing their symptoms of the mental illness that they know nothing about. Young people who are predisposed to a mental illness may be drawn to using marijuana. This can be because they think that they'll fit in, or having a mental illness sometimes can make you more susceptible to trying certain drugs or trying certain substances to see what will come out of the usage. Self-medication, not aware that they're self-medicating, but it makes them feel better. So some people use weed just because they make it feel better, but they don't feel like they're self-medicating for anything that they have going on within their lives or their mental illness. They don't feel like they're self-medicating by marijuana. They just feel like they're doing it just because it makes them feel good. Research now shows that we're seeing an increase of older population uses of marijuana. This could probably be because of recreational use. Like, as you get older, your joints and stuff may hurt, or you may just have pain in certain areas that you didn't have when you were younger. And so recreational use of marijuana, and knowing that it can help with some pain, this is why it can be seen as a good thing for the elderly population. This could be also a reason why we're seeing an increase of usage with this population. Solutions. So more research needs to be needed to show more background information about the effects of marijuana-induced psychosis. If someone has a mental illness and use marijuana, stopping will get rid of the disorder. Stopping will not get rid of the disorder, but it can lessen the frequency and intensity. So if someone has a mental illness and they're using marijuana, if they stop, then some of the symptoms or the severe symptoms that they have may draw back some, but it won't take them fully away. It is impossible to tell what dose is too big of a risk, because we're just going to edit that out. Informing young children and adolescents of dangers of drugging. We could also let them know that it is okay to ask for help. Some people don't think that it's okay to ask for help, or they're too embarrassed to ask for help. But just opening the window and letting people know that it is okay and that everybody can struggle with something, and it is okay to ask for help with this issue may prevent adolescents from using the drug. We can create groups or safe havens for those who are at risk, whether they're aware or not. So this is just making safe havens for adolescents in times of need or in times of struggle, somewhere that they can go to when they feel like they need to turn to the weed or turn to the marijuana. They have somewhere else to turn to besides to drugs. Inform parents on the signs that their child may be using marijuana. So sometimes it comes with educating parents We can educate the parents to let them know what signs to look for when it comes for trying to see if their child is using marijuana or other drugs or not. So it just comes with equipping the parents with tools that they need or things that they should watch out for when it comes to their child and using marijuana. We could also create school fairs that educate students on the effects of marijuana on the body. This comes into play because some adolescents and teenagers aren't aware of the effects of marijuana. They only see their family members using it, or they only see peers using it, and they don't really know the effects. They're just thinking that it's okay because they see everyone else doing it. So if we set up these school fairs while we're at school, while the kids are at school, this can educate them and let them know the effects that it can have on the body and the harmful things that it can do to the brain, just to assure that they know what is going on before they try the drug. SWOT analysis. So the strengths of marijuana is it can be used in positive ways. It can be used to help with chronic pain in patients who have had injuries and surgeries. And like I said, this is one of the reasons why we see the older population using using marijuana. Marijuana also has an impact on insulin, and for this reason, it can help with regulating diseases like diabetes. So some people who have diabetes may use marijuana to keep their symptoms of the diabetes at bay. Epilepsy is another disease that marijuana can be helped to treat because its properties have shown to stop with the seizures. I also have a friend who had medicine for their seizures, and the medicine used to have side effects that were worse than the seizures, and they didn't like that, so they started turning to marijuana, and marijuana actually has helped their seizures stop, or well, it hasn't completely taken away the seizures, but it has lessened them to a lesser. The seizures have not completely stopped, but they have been at bay, and they have had a less frequency than they did when he was actually taking the medicine that he was prescribed by his doctor. If someone stops smoking marijuana, the effects of psychosis will reverse. So if someone does not have an underlying mental illness and they stop and they stop using marijuana, the effects of psychosis will stop when they stop. Whereas if a person has a mental illness and they and they stop using marijuana, the symptoms of their mental illness will not go away, but the symptoms may lessen because, as we know, marijuana does induce and create more severe symptoms than the mental illness does itself. Weaknesses. Marijuana has been shown to trigger psychosis in people who use it chronically. So chronic use is everyday use. A person who has become psychologically dependent, or a person can become psychologically dependent and addicted to the substance. A person won't experience withdrawal symptoms, like physical withdrawal symptoms, but a person can become psychologically dependent on the substance, whereas their body doesn't need the drug, but their mind makes them feel like they need the drug. Opportunities. Now that people have been shown what marijuana can cause psychosis, maybe they will be less likely to use the substance chronically. With bringing more awareness, we have the opportunity to prevent the chronic use of this drug, and with bringing more awareness, we also have the opportunity to stop younger adolescents from using the drug as much as they do. Threats. The substance can distort a person's perception on reality, which is psychosis, and it can also slow coordination. So when someone uses marijuana, their coordination can be off balance, their coordination can be thrown off, and that's simply because the chemicals in the marijuana itself alter the brain, the section of the brain that has to do with coordination. So in conclusion, marijuana is a contributing factor in inducing psychosis. Although marijuana can be seen as a contributing factor to psychosis, if it is used properly, the effects can be positive. Just like another example of this would be medicinal marijuana. Chronic unauthorized use of marijuana can lead to serious effects on the brain, And if one already has a mental illness, marijuana exaggerates the symptoms of that mental illness. And here are our sources.